This isn't a script for a new season of Narcos or the latest Hollywood heist movie. This is the unbelievable story of a real-life criminal mastermind who outsmarted an entire country twice. We're talking about a man who turned a maximum security prison into his personal playground and orchestrated one of the craziest escapes in modern history through the legendary El Chapo Tunnel. This is the story of Joaquín Guzmán, aka El Chapo. Set. In this crime documentary, we're not just telling a story, we're launching a full criminal investigation. We will dive deep into the underworld of the Sinaloa Cartel, exploring the criminal psychology of a man who is part drug lord, part master thief. This isn't just a tale of a prison break. It's a saga of power, corruption, and one of the most ingenious escape plans ever conceived. It's a true crime story so bizarre, it could be a Buzzfeed Unsolved episode on steroids. Now let's get into the full story. Hello. In the 1990s, specifically in 1993, while America was still struggling in the war on drugs that former President Richard Nixon had started against drug cartel traffickers, a new cartel star rose to prominence. Its leader surpassed even the legendary role model Pablo Escobar, with his daring methods and complex networks of organized crime. While Escobar was controlling the cocaine trade in Colombia, this man was expanding his drug empire in Mexico, turning it into the world's largest hub for trafficking. He became the #1 enemy of the American authorities and the DEA, not just because of the enormous quantities of drugs that entered America due to him, but also because of his intelligence and influence, which helped him manipulate security systems and pull off an ingenious escape plan from the most maximum security prison facilities in Mexico. Not just once, but twice, making for one of the craziest escapes in history. After that, the name El Chapo would become one of the most dangerous names in the world of crime. Welcome, and today in this crime documentary, I'm going to tell you about El Chapo and his insane plans to escape from prison. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell to be notified of our new true crime story every week. Let's see your support. On April 4th, 1957, a simple rural family from the Mexican state of Sinaloa welcomed their new baby, Joaquín Guzmán. Like any normal family, they tried to educate him, but things changed quickly after 3 of his older brothers died. He was forced to leave school, a key moment in his criminal psychology. Given his young age, he began work on his father's farm. But as Joaquín grew older, he discovered the farm was part of the underworld of organized crime, used to grow marijuana, which his father sold to local dealers. In addition to his father's poor treatment, Joaquín began to help his mother. But despite all his attempts to earn a living honestly, the doors were always closed. For this reason, at the age of just 15, he decided to grow marijuana himself, his first real step into a life of crime. By the time Joaquín reached 18, he had started to become known among the local dealers. He became known among the people as El Chapo, which means shorty. But because he was sharp and skilled in the trade, he began to get close to major dealers in his state. In the late 1970s, he started working with a well-known drug trafficker named Hector Salazar, helping him map the routes between Sinaloa and the United States. This gave him extensive experience in the region, turning him into a master thief of logistics. Over time, his trade began to expand until in 1988, he formed a large gang that became known as the Sinaloa Cartel, a major player in international trafficking. He began to use a different method of smuggling by digging underground tunnels, at a time when the biggest cartels were smuggling their goods by land or air. While these major players were facing great difficulty, El Chapo, with his secret tunnels, was able to expand his trade. This was the signature of a true criminal mastermind. In a short period, he became one of the fiercest competitors to the largest drug cartels in all of Mexico. Although more than one person testified in American courts that El Chapo's gang was behind the smuggling operations, no one was able to catch him, making his early operations an unsolved mystery for law enforcement. The rapid expansion of Joaquín's gang angered the older gangs, most notably the Guadalajara Cartel, run by Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, also known as El Padrino or the Godfather. He was one of the biggest drug lords in the country and a close personal friend of Pablo Escobar. Miguel felt he was facing a character it would be a loss to let slip through his fingers. He asked to meet him and negotiated a cooperation between the two cartels. Because El Chapo was obsessed with Pablo Escobar, he immediately agreed and became responsible for transport logistics. Due to El Chapo's skill, they flooded America with drugs until Miguel himself was arrested. Overnight, the entire operation fell under the command of Joaquín. Means, at that time, there was no one on the scene competing with El Chapo except the Tijuana Cartel. After El Chapo became almost dominant, they decided to go to war with him. Skirmishes and violent clashes began, a classic mafia-style turf war. The solution they resorted to was to assassinate El Chapo. On May 24, 1993, while El Chapo was at Guadalajara International Airport, about 20 armed men from the Tijuana gang appeared and engaged in a firefight. The shootout turned the airport into a chaotic crime scene, which ended with a large number of deaths. But what turned the world upside down then was the murder of the Archbishop of Guadalajara, Juan Jesus Posadas Ocampo, who was hit by 14 bullets. This assassination became a national murder mystery. Amidst the confusion, El Chapo escaped. But the death of an archbishop at the hands of a drug gang was not going to pass easily. Immediately after the incident, the Mexican president traveled to Guadalajara to personally oversee the criminal investigation developments. Of course, America, along with the FBI and DEA, began to pressure the president. Pictures of those involved began to spread, and at the head of them was El Chapo. This was the first time his face became known. A reward of $5 million was offered. El Chapo was forced to flee. He traveled to Guatemala, but an official took his $1 million bribe and then reported him. So, on June 9, 1993, Guatemalan forces stormed a hotel, and El Chapo was arrested and extradited to Mexico. As one of the most dangerous drug lords, he was sent to the La Palma federal prison and was sentenced to 20 years. On November 22, 1995, he was transferred to Puente Grande, the most dangerous and maximum security prison in Mexico at the time. A prison that only housed the most dangerous criminals. Its prison break rate was virtually nil. So, for El Chapo to enter a place like this meant the end of his criminal career. But the surprise was that what happened then was the opposite. El Chapo had amassed an enormous fortune that would allow him to buy the prison. Through his Escobar-like style, he managed to turn his cell into the headquarters of his drug empire. He enjoyed his stay there so much that he no longer wanted to leave. At this time, America was desperate to get El Chapo into one of their prisons, but Mexican law prohibited the extradition of cartel leaders. This led America to start accusing the Mexican authorities of colluding with their own drug cartels. Until, in 2001, the Supreme Court of Mexico proposed a new law allowing the extradition of some criminals. Of course, the first person America would request was El Chapo. As soon as the news reached him, he became desperate to get out of that place by any means necessary. Since everything was running on bribes, he managed to buy the deputy head of prison security. He also bought a young man from the prison staff named Chito. On January 19, 2001, Chito stood in front of El Chapo's cell, took him in the laundry cart, and wheeled him out of the prison gates. This perfectly planned getaway was a humiliating moment for the criminal justice system. A few minutes later, El Chapo was a free man. Despite the huge amounts of money the Mexican authorities spent to find him, he remained at large for 13 full years, becoming a modern unsolved mystery and a living cold case. No one knew where he was. Until in 2014, the Mexican authorities decided to cooperate with the American authorities. After extensive investigations, they were able to penetrate the encrypted communication network used by the cartel. Through it, they were finally able to determine his location. Based on the coordinates, it turned out that El Chapo was hiding in a house in Sinaloa. A team of Mexican forces, American Special Forces, and the American DEA set out on February 17, 2014, and stormed the house. But all the houses that El Chapo used were terrifyingly fortified. When the forces stormed the house, they discovered a second door made of steel. At this time, El Chapo was sleeping inside. He woke up and understood the police had found him. By the time the police broke down the door, everyone inside had vanished into thin air. After a long search, they accidentally discovered a small opening next to a bathroom mirror. They were surprised to see the bathtub lift up, revealing an El Chapo tunnel dug into the ground. They immediately understood that El Chapo had escaped from them once again. Since they had taken a long time to discover this tunnel, El Chapo had already gotten out. He set out for the city of Mazatlan, but up to this point, El Chapo didn't know that his communication lines were being monitored. That's why, just 5 days after his escape, on February 22nd, they were able to find out from a call that he was at the Miramar Hotel. At 6:40 a.m., they stormed his hotel room and arrested him. This time, El Chapo was not sent to Puente Grande prison. That's why when Felipe Calderón became president, he ordered the construction of a new, even more secure prison, Altiplano Prison. It was considered the most suitable place for someone like El Chapo. Massive walls, snipers, and anti-aircraft systems. This was where the war on drugs was supposed to end for him. In addition, anyone who was imprisoned there was kept in solitary confinement with a GPS device attached to their leg. All indicators this time suggested that this would be the final entry for El Chapo. Then, El Chapo knew that the challenge this time was stronger, but with his arrogance, he was not going to give up. His right-hand man, Damaso Lopez, was tasked to draw up a foolproof prison escape plan. Damaso, with his experience, knew all the security systems. All his thinking was focused on trying to get El Chapo out through an underground tunnel. And since the guards monitored the cell all day, he knew the only blind spot was the shower area. This was the loophole he decided to exploit. So, Damaso bought a plot of land 1.5 kilometers away from the prison. From there, the digging of the El Chapo tunnel began. It was a complete engineering work, a testament to ingenious escape plans, with ventilation, lighting, and even a railway line with a cart pulled by a motorcycle. This detail makes it one of the greatest heists against a prison. The incredible precision was dwarfed by the most important part, determining the location of his cell. A brilliant piece of forensic-style thinking was needed. They smuggled a GPS device inside his wife's wristwatch to get the exact coordinates. Digging the tunnel took a full 16 months. On July 11th, 2015, the appointed day for his escape arrived. At 8 o'clock, he sat on his bed, went to the bathroom area, and suddenly disappeared completely from the cameras. A true perfect crime. And by the time the guards discovered he was not in his cell, about 40 minutes had passed. He had already reached the end of the tunnel, changed his clothes, and escaped. A private plane took him to his main headquarters, a fortress carved into the heart of a mountain. But because, in the code of cartels, a leader hiding is a disgrace, El Chapo had to resume his trade. He succeeded for 6 full months. Until one day, a resident of Los Mochis reported a house frequently visited by armed individuals. When police monitored their communications, they noticed they always talked about Grandma. Until one day they said, "Grandma is arriving at the house today." At that point, the police immediately translated that Grandma was El Chapo himself. On the morning of January 8th, 2016, Mexican and American forces raided the location. But as usual, El Chapo managed to escape through a tunnel. When he reached the end, he stole a citizen's car. But unfortunately for him, the citizen reported the robbery instantly. They were able to track the car and arrest him. At that point, El Chapo tried to buy the officers, but this time he was with people who had a conscience. His tone changed to threats, but the officers contacted their superiors. A few minutes later, El Chapo was arrested for the 3rd time. After his arrest, he was transferred back to Altiplano Prison. As usual, he began to make a new plan for escape. But the authorities had had enough and decided to proceed with his extradition to America. When this news reached El Chapo, he ordered the assassination of the judge who had issued the extradition order. Indeed, in October 2016, the judge was assassinated. Yes. One day in January, El Chapo was surprised by soldiers entering his cell and taking him to a helicopter, and from there to a private plane that took off with them to New York. His trial began, which ended with him being sentenced in 2019 to life in prison. He is currently serving his sentence in one of the most secure prisons in the world in Colorado, completely isolated, bringing this incredible true crime addict saga to a close. And with that, we reach the end of the story. I'm waiting for your opinions, and if you have a crime story you want us to tell, write it in the comments. The idea that gets the most interaction, I will work on, God willing. Show me your support now, with a subscription, a like, a comment, and all that good stuff. Share the video with anyone you think will like it. I'll see you next time with a story even more thrilling than the last. This has been a deep dive into the mind of a criminal mastermind. Peace